On today's Prophecy in the News, we're going to discuss the coming New World Order and the man of sin who is going to bring about a cashless society, the mark of the beast. We have on today's program a special guest, Terry Cook, who produced the video, The Mark of the New World Order. Mr. Cook is a former policeman and in the Los Angeles area, and it's really good to have him on our program. Gary Stearman is here to discuss with me and Terry Cook eventually the mark of the New World Order.
Terry Cook has done a lot of, shall we say, detective work. Well, that was his basic training. And when you solve a crime, you try to assemble parts and pieces until you come up with an answer. And he has taken elements of control. You know, this is the name of the game, JR, and in this upcoming segment, which we're going to be watching, Terry Cook discusses the fact that what has come to be called the New World Order was really conceived right here in the United States by theoreticians, various, shall we call them, think tanks. And the New World Order really is based on control and surveillance. In other words, without surveillance, the system would not work.
And you notice with the present administration, we've had a greater push toward special identification cards and things of that nature.
Yeah, well, we saw our president hold up this very card. This one happens to say Health Security, has a magnetic stripe on the back. This is just a prototype, but ostensibly with this card you would have access to health care. But if every man, woman, and child in the United States were to receive one of these cards, you're talking not so much about health care as you are about control, because with this card would go a myriad of records, magnetic data files, etc.
And in our military today, we have the MARC card, which is a multi-technology automated reader card that takes care of all the machines that would read any kind of card, wouldn't it?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this prototype called the MARC, a multi-technology automated reader card, has the little smart chip on it. It has the barcode, and on the back it has the magnetic stripe, so that they catch you any way you happen to be going. This is the nature of the discussion. As Terry Cook and JR recently looked into elements and factors of control. It's all about technology. It's all about a philosophy which desires to control the lives of every man, woman, and child on Earth. Let's go to that segment right now, previously taped.
According to U.S. News and World Report, in a magazine entitled Waiting for the Messiah, there is a new clash over the Bible's millennial prophecies. And according to this article, there's a broad expectation that when the world's odometer ticks over to 3 zeros, it will have cosmic significance. There is a group of politicians across the world who are attempting to establish a new world order by the year 2000. They want a world government. Now, the Bible tells us from Genesis to Revelation that a new order will come. It is called the millennial reign of Christ. Revelation 20 tells us that he will rule and reign for 1,000 years. Well, that's a millennium. So as the human race approaches the coming millennium, there are a lot of Christians who are convinced that Christ will return to establish that millennium. But those who do not believe in Jesus Christ want a different kind of millennium. They want a utopia without God, and they call it a new world order. Terry Cook, tell us about this new world order and how people will be identified, the so-called security that they will prepare for the world's population.
Well, in conformance with the scriptural information we have, it appears as though we're about to go into what we call, JR, as the mark of the beast system. You see, ultimately, it's going to result in all of us being identified in the hand or the forehead so that we can buy and sell, obviously in a cashless society. We can now understand that.
And by the way, if the Bible didn't say that there would be an identification in the hand or the forehead, there would still be an identification system required for some kind of world utopia.
That's right.
It's impossible for man to have a utopia without being able to control people.
That's right. And so what we're seeing is that Satan's people are setting up the infrastructure globally now, the electronic infrastructure or the system that Satan is going to utilize to surveil and control all of us in the New World Order. And in fact, JR, on the front page of this publication that was printed right after George Bush announced the New World Order over 200 times, we can show people that the World Federalist Association, basically a New World Order think tank in Washington, D.C., says that. They actually admit that in this publication that came out in 1990. A New World Order can bring security to the world's people. On page 102 of this document, JR, they're at least intellectually honest enough to admit what's going on. So let me read a statement by Mr. Richard Falk here on page 102, Part 4, Alternative Paths to a New World Order. Mr. Richard Falk says, "It is evident that the New World Order as conceived in Washington is about control and surveillance and not about better values or a better life for the peoples of the world." So at least they admit it, don't they?
Yes.
So
it's obvious today with rising crime, problems of drugs, people are not going to revive their spiritual feelings. It's a dog-eat-dog, hate type world out there. Give me all you've got or I'm going to take it from you type of mentality. And for human beings not to have any morals, because our moral foundation has been cut out of us when the Bible and prayer was judicially removed from public schools.
That's right.
And since then, of course, there is no moral base. Therefore, there is no value system. So man can do whatever he wants to do, but you've got to be able to control these beasts called human beings.
Exactly. So what Satan is really doing now through human agents is he's creating lawlessness, just as the Lord prophesied would happen just before his return. And Satan is creating lawlessness, and in order to reestablish order and control, to regain control after he has first created the lawlessness, is to surveil and control all of us by identification card and microchip implants. And that we're going to share a little bit of information about microchip implants today.
Yeah. I want to show you just a big blown-up picture of some of these little glass implants. This is actually a transmitter. You can see this is the power supply and I guess the antenna as well.
Yes, that's correct.
And then the microchip here digitizes a person's identification number. And these things are really small. In fact, let me show you one of them right here. This is still rather large. This needle right here can actually put one of these under the skin. And it's about the size of a grain of rice. This thing can keeps track of animals today.
Yes.
But it's just as easy to keep track of humans.
In fact, we have newspaper articles that tell us that's coming, JR. Indeed, these chips are called radio frequency transponder chips. They have no batteries. They can never wear out. The mathematical probability of failure, according to Hughes Aircraft, is about 200 years. Well, that'll outlive most of us unless we're Adam. And I think he's gone with the Lord right now. So these things will virtually outlive any of us. Most of us don't live past 200. And so what we have here is we have probably the best system that's ever been created in the world, because it's batteryless, it's low frequency energy, there's no radiation, and a radio wave can simply go through our skin after it's been injected in the meat of our hand here and energize the chip with a radio wave, and after that it broadcasts a pre-burned in ID number back to the scanner. And of course, if you don't have the mark of the beast, it says no ID found.
Amazing.
Interesting, huh?
Yes, it really is.
Well,
this is the technology used today for animals.
For animals, of course, they don't define who all of the animals might be, JR.
And of course, humans are acting more like animals than ever before.
That's
Isn't that amazing?
That's
because there's no moral base, no values left
None
in our
whatsoever.
society.
And while you're looking that up, JR, let me share that the newspapers are telling us what's coming. It says defense satellite technology is now ready for a commercial boom. And it says here specifically that everything in the U.S. will be tracked with microchips around the year 2000.
All kinds of technology has been developed today for injecting identification systems under the skin of animals and human beings. This is an awesome looking needle here for putting one of those things in. And in this box there are identification bands used at the Olympics, and here's another one here. And also identification for automobiles as they travel up and down the highways of our land. Several different types of injection needles here. This is an awesome array of paraphernalia so that the government can keep track of individuals.
Yes, that's true. Well, vehicles, trash cans, individuals, animals, cars, planes, boats, virtually everything, JR, I like to describe it this way. Everything that talks or moves or is sold in the New World Order by the year 2000 will be trackable and traceable by some technological means that's now in the works.
Amazing. With the barcode on goods in the grocery stores and what have you, product identification has been around for some time now.
Yes.
And everyone's gotten used to it, like the frog in the proverbial water that just keeps getting hotter and hotter. The next step will be people identification.
Well, they say it, in fact, virtually everywhere we turn today. A sample of this kind of documentation is provided for our audience in the form of this transcript page from Oprah Winfrey. Back in, Winfrey, I guess is the correct pronunciation, Oprah Winfrey. Back in February 25, 1994, and they say that your life will be significantly different in the year 2000. You see, everybody's setting these dates. We're not setting these dates.
Yep.
The media is setting the date of the year 2000 as the date in which something dramatic is going to happen, and specifically regarding identification and computer chips and how they will affect us. This whole show was about how we'll all have chips of some kind in our body, and that will make our lives better by the year 2000, right?
Amazing. These identification chips that basically can keep track of everyone will help the government be able to track offenders, that is felons, terrorists, illegal aliens.
Yes.
But those of us who have just been born in America and grow up and so on, it shouldn't affect us as long as we keep the law and we're nice guys, right?
Well, that's what they tell us, JR. Do you believe them?
Well, the next step is, if we don't believe exactly the way they believe, then we can be caught and sent off to some concentration camp.
Well, of course, we Christians know that there is an ulterior plan that encompasses much more than that. And we know that eventually the Antichrist will require that everyone worship him and take his chip or his mark in their hands, or they won't be able to buy or sell.
But for us as Christians to talk about such a possibility makes us paranoid, doesn't it, in their eyes?
And right-wing extremists. That's the label being used today by the liberals and the socialists and atheists. One such example of how animals are being identified today, I should say many such examples, are displayed clearly right here. St. Louis had a newspaper article where it said horses are getting microchipped in their under their mane. They're getting microchips under their skin and the back of the neck. Gaston, North Carolina Pound is now using microchip technology to identify every dog that's picked up and taken into the pound. Kids in elementary schools are being brainwashed that all their puppies should be identified with microchips. Of course, they don't want to lose Fido, and it makes a lot of sense. There are some good things to this, JR, but ultimately we paranoid Christian types know where it's all going.
Those dogs and horses and what have you are guinea pigs, aren't they?
Right. And that's why they're doing it to them first, to get us used to the idea. In 1989, this technology first surfaced, and people were a little bit reluctant to do it. It's widely accepted now, and people are talking about putting it into their kids. We're going to get to that. San Francisco Chronicle takes one step further. In April of 1995, JR, it says the city of Novato, up by San Francisco, now mandates that all cat owners within the city of Novato must inject a microchip in the neck of its cat, or they get a 20-day fix-it ticket. Now imagine, it says here that this is an Orwellian program of major consequences here. And so now they're mandating that animals have chips. Could it be that we're next?
Yes.
Well, the St. Peter's mayor says in this Winsell Journal, it's up by the St. Louis area, and this came out March 1996, and this mayor is already proposing, he's all for it. He says we should have microchips in our ears. One in our right ear would be a telephone chip, and our other ear would be an ID and medical ID chip. Some people that heard him say that, who were Christians, said, this sounds like the book of Revelation. This sounds apocalyptic. This sounds like Big Brother.
The mark of the beast.
But I remind you again, March 1996, these things are going out in the secular media. This is not a Christian publication.
Technology is definitely there.
It's definitely there. The Tucson Citizen newspaper, January of 1996, said we'll have ID chips injected in our bodies that will replace our driver's licenses, our credit cards, and other forms of ID. So they're actually getting our minds ready with this conditioning material in the secular media. Interesting. Los Angeles Times said, well, all these chips that are going into animals are just great, but this one fellow here who wrote this article is a little bit leery. He says the next thing you know, we'll have people scanning after the PET scanning, and he says, I'm not sure I like this idea. Of course, this article comes right out and says, in Automatic ID News, a secular publication on identification technology, they say, if the chips are okay for dogs and pets, well, how about doing it to our kids now? Can you imagine? This stuff is out there in our everyday world. These aren't a bunch of Christian fanatics who are saying this. These are people in the identification industry.
Incredible.
Popular Science, July of 1995, not only talks about a digital money system or a cashless society coming by the year 2000, it talks about smart cards, but it says if we had our way, we'd inject an ID chip in everyone's ear when they're born at the hospital. Popular Science. And the Chicago Tribune came out May 7, 1996, and said in the future we'll have microchips injected under our skin. It'll be Big Brotherish, but nonetheless it may be compulsory in the very near future, JR.
And this is being planned somewhere around the year 2000.
Yes.
The Bible tells us that when the Antichrist takes over and attempts to set up a world government, he is going to have some means of personal identification for every person on earth. I suppose that's so that they can track people from one country to another, track felons, but it also means that there will be no free people.
No.
It will mean the total enslavement of the human race. You see, prisoners are fed, they have medical, but they're not free. And that's the way every human being will be during Satan's reign on earth. I'm glad it'll only be for a short time.
Amen.
Well, Terry Cook, as a retired Los Angeles police officer, knows how to document a case. He comes armed with a veritable truckload of materials, and they're all very convincing. JR, they point to one thing. People are getting serious. We're not talking about wild-eyed Christian prophecy mongering here. We're talking about the secular news media coming up with all of these timetables.
And it's interesting that they have projected the year 2000. That's coming up very soon.
Yes, it is, 4 years from now, which means that probably behind the scenes there is a lot of research and development going on. We've spoken before about terrorism as a threat in the United States, and it wouldn't take much if we had a problem with internal terrorism to produce the stimulus for the issuance of a national ID card. And of course that would be, quote unquote, to protect the citizenry. But you and I know what it would really be for.
Yes, Bill Clinton offered the ID card with his health care program, and it failed. It failed completely.
Right.
But terrorism could produce the impetus for imposing it upon the American people without a vote.
Without a vote of any kind. In fact, totally bypassing all of the legislative protections, the constitutional protections that we have in this country, and all on the grounds of protecting the citizenry. We need to be very diligent. We need to be very watchful these days.
All of this will come to pass because even without Jesus coming, they couldn't maintain their facade. Christ is coming, however, to judge them all.